Let's create a budget. Let's get out of debt. Let's build wealth. Guys, welcome back to the channel. So in the last few videos, we have completed all of these outside bubbles. So now it's time to move to the inside one, which is expenses. So when it comes to expenses, most people will basically just write down every thing that they pay for every month and count that as expenses. We look at expenses differently. So when we look at expenses, we break expenses down. So you have your normal everyday expenses, adding all of your expenses up. And once you get that total number, that would be your everyday expenses. So again, when you list all of your bills, and I always recommend going over basically a 3-month period. And this is anything that you have used within the last 3 months to pay with. So that could be your checking account. It could be credit cards, or it could be, whatever, a debit card, whatever you use. Pull that entire month worth of expenses. Just go through your statement. That way you don't forget anything, and itemize it out, everything out. So and this will basically be all of your bills and something that you pay monthly regularly. That's an expense. And make sure to always remember when looking at this to include, things that may come out annually. So once you list all of your bills out, you have everything itemized as far as what you pay. And another good practice when doing this is to do it on like Excel or something. I mean, you can write it down. If you write it down, once you have all of those expenses, then you'll have things like, where you go to a store every day, miscellaneous. These are charges that not really happens every month. It's just something that you did, say, like getting gas or buying food or buying lunch, things like that, which those things will come into the second part of this expense bubble, which is your budget. So you have all of your, and the way we do this on the channel, instead of budgeting out things, instead of itemizing out and trying to create like a budget app or something like that, well, basically you'll use a second checking account, and that will be your budget. So when all that money comes into the account, you have everything focused into one account, which is your main account. That main account, you'll take that card along with your credit cards and lock it in a safe. And then you'll pay a budget. A budget is just another expense. You'll pay it on the first of every month. And when I say pay it, basically all you're doing is you're transferring from your main account to that budget account. That budget account, that's the card that you will use for everyday expenses like gas, groceries. Groceries can either be itemized out in the everyday expenses, or you could just put that in your budget. So miscellaneous things like coffee or, convenience store purchases or things that's not part of the everyday expense will go into the budget. So as you're listing this out, if you're doing it on paper, you're writing down all the expenses for the last 3 months. Or if you're doing it on Excel, you're writing down all of the expenses for the last 3 months. You would then, if you're doing it on paper, you would basically mark out everything that you want to put into your budget. So that budget account, so once you have, you have your income, you have that number. And then once you have the total income minus the expenses, right, you have your cash flow. Well, when you go through those expenses, split it up. You'll split it up into everyday expenses. Once you have all of your everyday expenses, first take out those miscellaneous charges, food, groceries, gas, miscellaneous store purchases. Subtract that out of your everyday expense. And then when you take your income and you subtract your everyday expenses from it, you're going to have left over a cash flow. From that cash flow amount, you'll create your budget. What this is doing is keeping you, is scaling with you and making sure that you're going to succeed in this building wealth. So your budget, You know, it's the hand that was dealt to you. Whatever that amount is left, that's what you have to create your budget from. And just to illustrate this, let's say you had $5,000 income, you listed all of your expenses, and you know you had $3,000 expenses. Now, when you're going through creating this expense, understand that you listed every single thing on there, and then you subtracted out miscellaneous food, gas, store purchases. You're basically just listing everyday expense here, that like electricity, utilities, the basic thing that you pay every single month that you have to pay, and then subtract out all the rest. Once you subtract all the rest, you have $2,000 left. From here, now you're starting to think about, okay, I need to create a budget. Remember, you always have to have cash flow. You always have to have a positive cash flow, and we're going to be putting bank here in a second. So when you're creating this budget, just remember this budget kind of controls how much cash flow you have after all the necessary expenses have been done. So you look at this and you're like, okay, let's say the groceries and stuff, you know, you don't want to short yourself, but at the same time, you want to keep it in a range where you have some discipline on not, you know, buying things. So let's say you bought Starbucks every single day and it's $6 every single morning. If you need to include that in your budget, include like 2 or 3 days or 2 days. And don't, like I said, don't sell yourself short, but at the same time, make sure that you're including an amount that you can live within. And this is going to be hard for some people because it's kind of new to even have a budget. So that's basically the breakdown on that part. And so that third expense will be the family bank. So, you know, you like in that earlier example, when you had the $2,000 left over, before you get your cash flow number, make sure you think of your budget. And once you get your budget, make sure you leave enough money for your family bank and then still have cash flow left over. So the family bank, the infinite banking concept, there's other videos if you're not familiar with it. So we do use the family bank. This is going to be, if you look at this expense column, when that on that flow chart, when it comes down to expenses, those two, the budget and the everyday expense, that exhausts your cash flow and it leaves this rotation. You know, money is made to flow. This is an outflow. When it reaches this point, it's flowing out. So it's important to have that family bank so that part of that expense, even though it's an expense and it's leaving, it's still staying within the flow. This family bank is the only bubble in this flow that keeps it going back and circulating back through the whole flow. So the family bank is important to have. Make sure that, you know, if you can't start the infinite banking concept, then use a savings account or something to in place of this bank, because you have to have that connection to keep that flow going. So the family bank, again, there's videos you can watch on it, you can understand it, and we need this as part of the expense. So remember, expense is a 3-part, you know, when you go to create your expenses, start thinking in the mindset that it is a 3-part process, which is budget, everyday expense, and family bank. So if you look at this, it's kind of like a little flow within the flow, you know, expenses, and we're looking at how we can capture some of those expenses back. And again, you have expenses going out, right? You have your budget, which is basically, in a way, it's kind of like it's basically a need, right? And then you have your everyday expenses, which is a necessity. You know, this is things that's going to other people. You know, it's keeping businesses and keeping things going, and it's something that you have to pay. And then you have your family bank. Family bank is yourself, right? You're basically paying yourself. If you don't have the family bank and your expenses is coming out and it's going to budget and it's going to everyday expense, you're shorting yourself, because that way you're not increasing or building any kind of wealth. You're going to stay in, if without the family bank, and again, that could be a savings account, it could be something, but without this bubble in there, then you're basically in a loop of a same process over and over, and nothing's going to change in your life. So you got to make sure that you have that connection to keep this flow going. So again guys, you look at expense, it's kind of an odd bubble. It just kind of like sits in the middle, and it, you know, the thing about this is every single one of these bubbles are important, and every single one of these bubbles have multiple different ways of utilizing and using them, all to help fuel you and guide you towards your goal. So don't overlook each one, break each one down, and it will work for you. Again guys, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Click the notification bell. This will alert you anytime there's a new video posted. And also, if you found value in this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Clicking the thumbs up does help push this video out to more people so that they can change their lives and their family lives. Again, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.